episode of Ang Artimo, and I am your host, your respiratory therapist, Michael D. Peralta. And today's episode, we have Mr. Lynard Higoy from Alberta, Canada, live, um, joining us live here on our show. Uh, would just like to greet everyone, to all our subscribers, all our followers, all our supporters that are supporting the Ang Artimo channel, that are supporting the respiratory therapy profession. Would like to thank each and every one of you for your support, your continued support for our show and the profession. Thank you so much. Shout out to all our followers and viewers from the Philippines, from the Middle East, Singapore, Europe, and the United States and Canada. Welcome to our show, and thank you for joining us today. Give you a chance, sorry, to once again click the link and follow the new stream link. This is what we're using now because of the technical difficulties we're having earlier. So bear with us here, folks. Thank you for your patience. Um, Here we go. Next one is towards the or after the presentation of Mr. Leonard Higoy, we will have a game show or a quiz B or a sputum bowl, whatever you call it. But Mr. Leonard Higoy will be giving out 5,000 pesos to our lucky grand winner for the show. And for our second and third placer, we will, the on our Timo will give out the 1,000 pesos, Philippine pesos each for the second and third participant. Because we didn't have a winner for our episode two. We didn't have a winner for our episode two. So we will be giving two prizes for this episode, including Mr. Leonard Higoy's 5,000 pesos um, lucky pot. So, all right. So, shout out also to all our new respiratory therapists registered in the Republic of the Philippines, or RTRPs, for passing the 2021 RT license board exam in the Philippines. Congratulations. We are so proud of you joining the ranks of the new respiratory therapists in the profession, and we can't wait for you to join us, with our current fight in the pandemic. Hope you guys are doing well, celebrating safely with your friends and families, and we are so proud of all of you. And for those who didn't make it, there's another just you can just always retake the test, review more, and we are 100% here to support you, and we wish you luck, and we pray for your next test to be a successful one, to be RTRP soon. So we are 100% supportive of everyone, and congratulate again everyone. So we are now going to invite Mr. Leonard to join us on our show, since we are already 27 minutes after our start time. And I do apologize for the time confusion due to spring forward rule that we have here in the United States. So basically, we lost an hour. That's why we have time difference or difficulties or changes for the Manila and our Dubai time. Okay, so once again, thank you for your support. Thank you for joining us. And here we are now live with Mr. Leonard Higoy from Alberta, Canada. I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No,
So,
that's actually correct.
yeah.
Did we fix the audio?
Yeah, we did. We did. There's just
Okay, perfect.
I have the
Perfect.
typical call it the typical reset, turn off, turn on thing.
Okay, got
So
it, got
we
it,
are
got
now
it.
live with our audio on. So thank you for joining us today, Leonard. Welcome
Yeah,
to the
good evening
Artimo show.
or good morning, I guess, to our Filipino viewers, and I guess as well for Middle East. So I'm Leonard. I'm practicing RT here in Alberta, Canada. So
Awesome.
I'm presenting today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. So, Mr. Leonard is from, I think it's Leonard, not Leonard, huh? Because of the Y.
Yeah, no, it's like Leonard Skinner. It's like Leonard Skinner without the Y.
Yeah.
But you can call me Leonard
Mm,
or Leonard
mm.
as long as it's not Lynard. I don't really like that.
Yeah. So, all right, Mr. Leonard will be presenting after our question and answer portion here. He will be presenting meter MDIs with spacer versus the nebulizer, or basically our
Yeah.
inhalers versus nebulizer. So, let just stay tuned with us, and we will get to that presentation in a bit here. But since this show is about ang Artimo, for our non-Filipino viewers, so just to explain what's ang Artimo, basically ang Artimo, it means your RT or your respiratory therapist. RT or ARTE, arte means kind of you're kind of pretentious, or kind of, we call it kind of pretentious, so we just kind of, put a twist in it. But basically what we mean is your respiratory therapist. So the goal here is we get to know our guest respiratory therapist, and he will present later. That's just the difference, because we are not a formal, conference here. We're just trying to have a little fun here and get to know our respiratory therapist that you can't get on a formal conference. Anyway, our first question is, Mr. Leonard,
Okay.
briefly introduce yourself. So, where have you gone RT school? What are your current credential? And where do you work now, and what do you currently do?
Okay. So I did my Bachelor of Medical Rehabilitation in Respiratory Therapy at University of Manitoba. So if you guys are familiar with the Canadian city, Winnipeg, I'm actually originally from Winnipeg, well, from the Philippines. I moved to Winnipeg. And then I went there accidentally and fell in love with respiratory. And then from there, I worked for the Winnipeg Regional Health for 4 years. But then I have to move to Alberta to follow my, back then was my girlfriend, and now we're married. So my wife. Credentials, I have a CRE, so that is a Certified Respiratory Educator. That is an extra credential if you want to go community side of respiratory therapy. I also have a Certified Tobacco Educator, so that's a CTE. That's more on like smoking cessation programs and such. Currently, I'm doing my management education, so I'm in grad school. I'm doing a grad diploma in leadership and management for from Athabasca University Faculty of Business, and then at the same time, I am fulfilling my conditional course to get into the Master of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies with a focus on work organization and leadership. So I'm now more on focusing on the leadership and management side. But I still love to be a frontline clinician right now, especially with COVID-19. I feel like we got the spotlight with this pandemic. So yeah, that's my background and that's my credentials
Mm-hmm.
so far.
Awesome. Not familiar with the or most particularly, or more particularly, the Alberta side of respiratory therapy. So you mentioned,
Yeah,
right,
it's quite different in the states.
right. So if you can educate me, I know you're familiar with the U.S. side of it. So we sit for NBRC RRT. What is the equivalent for the RRT credential in Alberta? So,
So we write a national exam. It's called CBRC. It stands for Canadian Board for Respiratory Care. So it's pretty much, in the Philippines like the PRC,
mm,
that's the board exam. Here it's the CBRC. It is a national exam. But then once you pass the exam, you have to register yourself to the college in which province you want to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was practicing in Manitoba, I have to register with MARC, Manitoba Association of Respiratory Therapists,
Mm-hmm.
or register respiratory therapist. And then when I move here, I have to register for CARTA. So it's a College of an Association of Respiratory Therapists of Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Different province has their own different
Mm-hmm.
jurisdiction. As far as I know, there's only a couple of province that is not regulated. I'm not sure with the other one, but for sure, British Columbia, where Vancouver is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they are regulated as of the moment. They don't have their own college, so they have to register themselves. Correct me if I'm wrong. With the CSRT, so that's the Canadian Society of Respiratory Therapists.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on where you want to practice.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
for giving us
yeah,
that education. With the different provinces, it's same with the United States, different states, different rules.
exactly.
Right. Some states don't have, regulatory exam, even though the national,
Oh, really?
right,
Yeah.
even though the national is, what do you call it? Even there's a national examination for it. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
most states here do are credentialed respiratory therapist or respiratory care practitioner. All right, so moving on. So we, on social media, which I am very active. And people are
Yes.
do aware of that.
And thank you for doing that. No, it's good.
Yeah,
It's good to promote our profession and, help our kababayan and
right.
such, especially with this pandemic.
True. That's what keeps us connected now. So social media.
Yeah,
Let's admit it.
exactly.
All right. So I've seen one of your posts, and I'm very well aware that you have been elected on such a position. Please tell us more about that, sir.
Yes, and I think it's an achievement not only for me but for us Filipinos, because I think finally we got in a leadership role, or an important leadership role. I mean, like, we know that there's a bunch of Filipinos in the healthcare profession, especially nursing, other professions like pharmacy, physio, and then of course respiratory therapy. But if you compare the ratio with respiratory therapists and nurses, there's so much. But I mean, it's still an achievement to think that I got elected, in a sense that it's so fulfilling that I'm also representing the other Filipino healthcare professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from, getting elected in my young age,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like the youngest member of the council, I don't think this is only my achievement, but I think it's also the achievement of all Filipino RTs, but not only RTs, again, as I said, healthcare professionals. So this position is pretty much sitting on the council and governing the respiratory therapy profession in the province of Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a 3-year term, and I'm the director till 2023, I think. I'm not quite sure, but around there.
Yeah, very proud of you for that wonderful achievement and having a representation for our kababayans. We can say, a Filipino Canadian, a true, a
Exactly, yeah.
full blooded Filipino Canadian who's in a leadership position representing the respiratory care profession, but also, as you mentioned, not only the respiratory, but also the healthcare profession as a whole. So,
Yeah, as I said, yeah, social media helped me, and then our fellow kababayans, nurses, Filipino nurses that know our RTs in their sites, they help me. So, I mean, yeah, it's a big achievement for us.
yep, very proud of you, and I think a lot of our kababayans are, all proud of you, and thank you for doing that. And we wish you luck on your journey as a director at large for that organization. Yep. Moving on. Um, you have mentioned before that that you were educated in Canada for your respiratory care degree or your
Yeah,
reha- uh, medical rehabilitation, correct?
Yeah, Bachelor of Medical
Right.
Rehabilitation.
And also, my question is, was this your first job or your first career? And, living on the Western side of things, you can, work or you can study later, right? And you can do something else
Mm-hmm.
first. Was this your first job or first career?
Yes,
Mm.
because I moved here when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm ready to go to college. Just so you know, guys, I worked at McDonald's when I was young. That I think would be my first job,
Yeah.
which actually helped me out so much
Mm-hmm.
because it really helps you out with your organization skills.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at the back end, so I
Mm.
salute McDonald's right there. I don't know if we have to, disclose, promote commercials or,
Yeah.
or products, but yeah. No, yeah, this is my first job,
Mm-hmm.
but as a Filipino and us being good in healthcare, healthcare is really where I want to be for program.
Uh-huh.
My first choice is actually pharmacy. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing though is, I didn't get into the cut that year. So, I was devastated. I was heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to stay for another year. It's totally different out here in Manitoba, in University of Manitoba. Your first year, you don't have a course. Then you have to fulfill the program, or you have to fulfill the requirements for a program that you want to go. So luckily, physio, respiratory therapy, and pharmacy is shared the same courses, but I'm aiming for pharmacy. But because I didn't get to the cut, I went to an open house to check physiotherapy program. When I was at the open house and I was the physiotherapy program, then I saw from afar the respiratory therapy booth, and I saw like the 840s. I saw the baby log. Before back then, I didn't know that it was the baby log. I just saw like there's like a bunch of machines and bunch of ventilators, and then there's a pig lung that was connected to the ventilator, the Jackson Rees. So like I went there, check out the open house. The RT was on the booth, told me to use the Jackson race and try to maintain a pressure of 26 and a PEEP of 10, I think, or 5. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I miraculously, apparently, I did that for a good 1 minute. So she told me that I think I'm built for the respiratory therapy program and not the physiotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was just accidentally in love, and I applied and I got in.
That's good. Quite a journey. That's how we recruit. Respiratory future respiratory therapists is invite them on, open house. Have them practice and make them be interested in the profession. But as you mentioned, we don't have sponsors here. It's okay. But
Okay,
McDonald's,
that's good.
good to know that you work at McDonald's. I did work for McDonald's too. I did work
Right,
for
right. Yeah,
three
McDonald's is
months
so
only.
good.
3 months
Yeah,
only. I couldn't last. I mean, that's hard work.
I
Salute to all our
yeah.
fast
Well, I
food
think
health,
yeah,
workers are amazing. Amazing. You gotta have to be fast. Dedicated to do it. It's a good
yeah.
job. You learn a
I
lot.
I worked there for a year, and I guess like being a Filipino, it's our brand. The Pinoy is hardworking. So
Right.
I worked there for 1 month as a regular crew. And then when I got into the RT program, I said I have to quit because I have
Mm-hmm.
to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they actually doesn't want me to leave. They actually offer me to be the shift manager if I want to stay
Right.
and don't go to college. But I was like, no, university is my priority. So
Yeah.
that was the end for my career for McDonald's. But yeah,
Right. And
I love McDonald's,
yeah, that's how they
especially
get
with
you.
the
That's how
yeah,
they get
especially
you.
with the 50% off if you're like an employee.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I gain all my weight from working at McDonald's.
Yeah, that's how they get you. You're leaving, you're a good employee. We'll promote you. Forget
Yeah,
about college, but we are proud of all our fast food, workers
yep,
and the managers
exactly,
there, front and back end of the side of things. You guys feed a lot of us. So, thank
exactly.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They're also frontline workers.
Right, yeah. So that's crazy, but good to know that you have worked to, something that is, an eye opening before you get into the field of,
Yeah.
healthcare. Um, so next question is, you mentioned that you are a community respiratory therapist. What does a community respiratory therapist do in Alberta? And how does COVID affected your job?
Okay. I guess that's another thing because I think if when I notice seeing Filipino or Philippine trained RTs or RTs working in Middle East, Philippines, the states, I noticed that I would say 80%, which is like actually part of our training, 80% works in acute care, which is good because, acute care, that's where the action is, that's where the adrenaline is. But there's, like a certain small percentage of people that actually want to work in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess there's also home care, there's community, there's people that works in the pulmonary function testing lab.
Mm-hmm.
Community respiratory therapy, though, especially in rural areas, is quite different. So we're sort of like jack of all trades. We don't work shift work. We don't work 24/7. There's only one RT in each territory. So in 3 counties that I cover, I'm the only RT in that area. And then sometimes we cross train nurses, especially for like oxygen therapy and therapy assistants. So community therapies is more on education
Mm-hmm.
and rehabilitation, and more on community rehabilitation and a lot of education. That's why it's very important that you have the CRE designation
Mm-hmm.
at least, the certified respiratory educator, because you do a lot of like asthma education, COPD education. I run a pulmonary rehab program. Currently, it's on hold right now because of the pandemic, but I'm actually going to open it as a virtual program. And I think that's going to be the new norm, or a mixture of in person and virtual. Aside from that, we also deal with people on trachs or chronic ventilated patients that can be discharged at home. So, we're the one that take care of them, give them education on how to properly do trach care. Here in Alberta and here in Canada, as you guys know, we're a public healthcare system. So everything can be covered through our publicly funded healthcare. So we also are, I would say, the important profession to assess them for home oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing to qualify them is through arterial blood gases.
Mm-hmm.
So we're the one that assess them for home oxygen. There's so much. It's like every single day, our days are different. It's just, we don't have the acute care anymore. We don't have the adrenaline anymore. We don't have a person, let's say, got into a car crash and you need to
Mm-hmm.
intubate them. That's far beyond my scope now.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm young, but I felt like my expertise is actually like talking to people. As you notice, I like to talk a lot. So I'm more on the community side. So that's what the community RRTs actually do here in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, there's also Alberta community RRTs, but I think the scope of practice will be different. But for us, that's pretty much like the bread and butter for us every single day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good to know. Good to know. It's a very broad scope and really much needed position in the communities, having a community respiratory therapist. That's something that that the United States and some counties, cities here in the United States could adopt. But the professional organizations here are working on that too and advocating for the profession. As everybody know, the respiratory therapy profession is very young and it's still blooming even up to this point. So we will get there, and with the COVID-19 pandemic, people have known, or a lot of people know now, what a respiratory therapist does, for our patients and for the community. So Thank you for
Yeah.
what you do for all your patients and all your all the people of Alberta in where you work. For sure they appreciate the work that you do and having that innovative pulmonary rehab program that is transitioning online. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yep. And then
Absolutely.
um next question here is uh you already answered some questions in here, like what's your favorite kind of unit in a hospital, or what's your forte, what's your specialty. And you already mentioned that you love talking to people and educating. So is that right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess for my training, we in Manitoba we got aligned with physical therapy and occupational
Mhm.
therapy. So we share the same faculty, College of Rehabilitation Science. So you could also say that I'm more on like the rehabilitation side of things. So stroke units,
Mhm.
pulmonary rehabilitation, neuromuscular clinics. So
Mhm.
that's, I would say, would be my scope of practice that I actually like enjoy.
That's awesome. All right, moving on to the next question here. You're young, you mentioned. Can you disclose your age for our audience?
31.
31.
I'm 31.
Awesome. We're young. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when you were practicing in the acute care side of the hospital, or when you were in respiratory care school, what's your favorite ventilator?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm.
The PB, no, what is it? The Evita? I would say that would be the purple one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
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 I think that's the one that I like.
yeah. That's
Don't ask me about the specifics because I totally lost all my
yeah,
my ventilator skills. But I still work in a chronic vent, and right now we use the Respironics trilogy
trilogy. Yeah,
for our clients here.
yeah. A lot of people did work on the acute side of the hospital. They gotta have to learn how to use those chronic ventilators, and
Exactly.
those
Yeah.
are quite challenging for some who are not used to it.
Hmm.
Yep. So I think we're almost done here with the questions here. Now, what is
Does
your
your does
mhm.
sorry? Does the audience have questions before I start? Or
If you have any questions at any point to our audience, please type them in on our YouTube channel, on the chat box. Type them in, and we will answer those questions.
yeah,
Um, if we don't get it now, hopefully we get it now. If not, we will answer that
yeah.
later on in
If
the
they
show.
have questions about how to practice here in Canada, I will try my very best. But again, as I said, different jurisdiction, different province has their own
Mm-hmm.
rules. But I can probably redirect you to the proper person that can talk
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like same provinces has the same like requirements anyway. So
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
so yeah, that's a good question. So, if this is, when I was in the Philippines, was fortunate to be invited to the ARCPP International Congress in Manila. That's one of the questions that they were asking with our CSRT folks, Dr. West and Carolyn McCoy, when they were there. Same question they go, for the United States. How can one practice respiratory therapist if you're a graduate from, say, Philippines? Just a brief, and then you can just redirect us where, for more information.
So as I said, different province has their
Mm-hmm.
own jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
But if you contact CSRT, I'm pretty sure they would love to. Like, they definitely will entertain you.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of aligning your experience and your education with the Canadian education, which is sometimes people think it's really scary, or sometimes people is already like losing hope that they'll be able to qualify here. It's just a matter of timing, and it's just you just maybe need to have some refresher course, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe just need extra training.
Mm-hmm.
But with work experience in school, it actually sometimes or the person that you will talk about that will definitely help you every step of the way. So I can only give you an idea
Mm.
in Alberta. So for Alberta, there's actually a link specifically for foreign trained RRTs. So if you go to the CARDA website and then I believe you go to member registry, there'll be a link there for foreign trained
Mm.
RRTs. And then it has all the informations that you need. I know it can be costly because you're paying like Canadian dollars, but like it's really worth it to try. And I even encourage everyone, especially in the Philippines, to try. I mean, like, there's no harm in trying, and they'll definitely give you answers for the questions that you need.
Yeah. Good thing that you mentioned that, contact the CSRT and they will entertain you. And, I could attest to that because when we were in the Philippines, that CSRT, and I think people know because every RTRPs in the Philippines are members of the ARCPP, and they are aware that there are, I cannot disclose much because I don't know much, but they signed a memorandum of agreement between the ARCPP, which is the Association of Respiratory Care Professionals Philippines Incorporated, the CSRT side in the Philippines, or ARC in the Philippines, and the Canadian Society of Respiratory Therapists. And the representatives that attended there, they are well aware of how the respiratory therapy education is in the Philippines, and how is it translated per se to the Canadian side of it. So yeah,
Yeah,
reach
and
out to
I can
Mhm,
attest to that
mhm,
because the CSRT, I believe a couple of years ago, released a position statement that yeah, they actually is really proud that they built partnership with the Philippine
right.
counterpart of the CSRT.
Mm,
They're very proud of that, so which is good. In fact, like, I'm pretty sure in the CSRT conference in May, there's one Filipino RT that will actually present, and I'm actually looking forward to actually watch his presentation.
yeah.
Good thing that our presentation is not the same time as his presentation, so that's for sure that I can attend his and then attend mine after that.
Yep, yep. And once the CSRT release their full agenda, then we can disclose whoever that person is. But yeah, can't wait for the CSRT annual convention, which is gonna be virtual this year, and we're
Mm.
gonna tune in for that and get more information as more information is available um, for that particular event. And now, next question I have, or one ask I have is, what is your message to our current respiratory therapist amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and everything that we're going through now? So just parting words before we move on to your presentation.
Um, my words is don't give up.
Mm,
I know it's saddening that we got our professions or our the respiratory therapy profession got the spotlight in an unfortunate event, which is COVID-19. So it's not really the best way to get the spotlight, but I mean, the pandemic is here now. We need to address it head on, and people are relying to our expertise. So I salute everyone all around the world in terms of respiratory therapists. And then I guess the fact that we're getting valued now and getting the vaccine as a COVID-19 vaccine, and we're part of the priority lane, that means that we actually move forward in terms of advocating and promoting our professions, which is actually really, really good.
mm-hmm.
We just, I guess it's just like we just have to accept this somber reality that the pandemic, the COVID-19 is here, and people are relying to us. The other healthcare professionals are relying to us. And I'm just saying, proudly to say that I'm really proud to be a respiratory therapist at this current environment. And I would say I appreciate everyone, every RTs all around the world.
All right. Thank you for that. And the last one is, what is your message to our future respiratory therapist? You know,
Oh, didn't they just write their board exam, like the one in the Philippines?
yeah,
So
they did.
congrats to whoever who
Mm-hmm.
passed, and to ones that didn't pass. You guys will have your time definitely the next time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just gonna say, everything is achievable. Don't just limit yourself for something that you're in your comfort zone. Go outside your comfort zone. Think outside the box. Always be proud of who you are and what you are. Anywhere in the world, we already have the Filipino brand, so I mean, like, people were already respected in terms of the healthcare profession, because it's just like our healthcare expertise and the quality of care that we give to our patients is already embedded to other nation,
Right.
and we already got respect in terms of the healthcare industry.
Mm-hmm. Good, good, good. Thank you for that message. And we are going to pause for a short, like a brief break before we go to your presentation. Then after presentation, we can have more time to chat and do the continue the
Okay.
show. So let me just transition my. All right, we'll be right back. All right, and you can. There you go.
Do you want me to end call?
No, just prepare your presentation. Where
How
they
do
can hear
I
us.
present it? Oh,
Um,
sorry.